Mom, I have a fever. Can I stay home from school today? Mom touched her forehead and allowed her to stay. At lunchtime, the daughter heard the key turn in the lock. Peeking quietly from her room, she saw her aunt enter and slip something into her mother's coat pocket. Before leaving, she said on the phone, "I've taken care of everything. You can call the police tonight. This fool won't understand a thing. And before we continue, please tell me what country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening." Marina always woke before her alarm. At this hour, the house breathed quietly, and even the clock in the kitchen ticked softer than usual. She brewed tea, placed a bowl of oatmeal on the table, and laid an apple beside it for her daughter. She liked to start her day the same way. Water, tea, 2 minutes of quiet by the window. The entire week was built on this tranquility. Her daughter was 10. At school, Nick was known as a quiet, attentive girl with a braid and neat notebooks. She eagerly did her homework and adored her technology and art classes. Marina worked as an accountant at a small plumbing supply company. Papers, numbers, signatures. She lived in a 2-room apartment inherited from her parents. Her sister lived separately on the other side of the city. Her sister's name was Vera. Vera was a year older than Marina. They were once close friends, going to the river together, sharing a single shawl and a secret hiding spot for notes. Then they grew up and grew apart. Vera's life was a constant struggle. Jobs changed. Money vanished mysteriously. "I urgently need help until payday. Please, save me." Marina had helped so many times she'd lost count. Not because she was wealthy, but because she felt she had to. "We're family after all. What else could I do?" In recent months, the calls had become more frequent. Vera complained about loans, neighbors, or temporary setbacks. One day, Marina firmly said, "I'm not giving you any more money, not because I don't love you, but because this way of living cannot continue." Vera was offended and disappeared for a week. No calls, no messages. That particular day began as usual. Only this morning, Nick suddenly put her hand to her forehead and quietly said, "Mom, my head feels hot. Can I stay home today?" Marina came over and touched her forehead. It was warm, but not burning. Her throat was a little red, her voice raspy. The child was tired, catching a cold. It was foolish to send her to school. "Stay, of course, lie down. Would you like some tea with honey?" "Yes," Nick whispered, and smiled faintly. Marina made a light tea, gave her a pill, settled her daughter in bed, and aired out the room. On the nightstand, a glass of water, tissues, and a book about forest animals nearby. Her forehead had cooled. Nick closed her eyes. "I'll be gone for a little while," Marina said. "For half the day, you have your phone. Answer it. I'll call it too. If you feel really unwell, ask the neighbor. He's home." The neighbor's name was Alexei. He was 50 years old, a former investigator. He lived on the same landing, quiet, tidy, with a habit of greeting everyone and fixing whatever was broken nearby. He and Marina had struck up a simple, neighborly friendship. He'd carry a heavy box for her or make her tea when she returned late. He knew his boundaries and maintained a distance. Marina left for work, and silence filled the apartment. Nick lay down and dozed off. She dreamed of a summer shore, the scent of cucumber leaves, and her mother's whisper in the kitchen. The dream was peaceful until, sometime during the day, a lock clicked. The sound was quiet, but distinct. Nick opened her eyes and froze. Who had come? She didn't get up. She listened. Someone carefully removed their shoes in the hallway and stepped onto the mat. The door closed without a click. The rustle of a bag. Nick sat up, quietly placed her feet on the floor, and peeked through the gap between the door and the frame. Vera, her aunt, entered the hallway. She wore a gray coat and carried a bag under her arm. She looked around as if checking for anyone. Carefully, without haste, she opened the closet where her mother's coat hung. She paused for a second, took a small, tightly taped package from her bag, and slipped it deep into the coat pocket, her fingers hiding it as if it might fall out. Then she closed the closet, adjusted her hair, took out her phone, and by the door, said quietly but clearly, "I've taken care of everything. You can call the police tonight. This fool won't understand a thing." A chill ran through Nick. The words police and taken care of everything suddenly formed a single direct thought. Aunt Vera wanted her mother to be arrested. The child didn't know what was in the package, but she understood it was something bad. The sound of a key turning was heard, the door closed, and the footsteps faded. Nick sat motionless for a few seconds, then stood up, quietly slipped into the hallway, and opened the closet, took out her mother's coat, her fingers trembling. The package was found immediately. It was rather heavy and unpleasant to the touch. The girl didn't open it. She wrapped it in a towel, placed it in a shoebox, and shoved the box under her bed. She returned the coat to its place. Her heart pounded like a ball against a wall. About 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Mom. Nick picked up the receiver and tried to speak in her usual voice. "How are you, my dear?" "Normal, Mom. My head barely hurts. I'll lie down some more. I'll call again at 2. If anything happens, tell Alexei right away. He's home. I prepared lunch. The soup is in the fridge." "Okay." Nick placed the phone on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. Her mother's and aunt's words spun in her head. She was afraid to tell her mom on the phone. What if Aunt Vera is listening? What if someone is nearby? She decided to wait until evening. She sat for another minute, then quietly knocked on the neighbor's door. Alexei opened it quickly. "Nick, what's wrong?" "Uncle Lyosha. The girl swallowed. I think I saw something. Aunt Vera came and put a package in. She said the police would come tonight. Mom isn't home." Alexei didn't ask unnecessary questions. His gaze instantly became businesslike. He asked Nick to repeat everything, step by step. The time, the words, where the package was. Then he said calmly, "We won't touch anything. It's where you put it, except you moved it. There are a few hours left until evening. We won't tell Mom now so she doesn't rush back frantically. We'll act quietly. If they come, you'll be with me. I'll explain what and how. Can you do it?" "Yes." "Good girl." Nick returned home. Time dragged on slowly. She turned on a cartoon but didn't watch it. She ate the soup and drank the tea. Marina called again. "Everything's fine, Mom. I'll be home soon." By evening, her mom arrived and saw Nick. The girl looked pale, her brow furrowed. She approached and placed her hand on her forehead. "Are you scared about something?" Nick took a breath. "Mom, don't be scared." "Okay. Aunt Vera came today. She opened the door with her key. I didn't let her know I was home. She put a package in your pocket and said on the phone that the police would come tonight. I took the package and hid it. I didn't open it." Marina sat down on a chair, quieter than before, and asked, "Are you sure?" Nick nodded. The words caught in her throat, but her head nodded. Marina closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Inside, a profound silence and clarity washed over her. No hysterics, no shouting, no, "It can't be." Just a steady line. "Act correctly. Thank you for telling me. You're a very smart girl. I'll call Alexei calmly now." Alexei arrived immediately and listened, asking Nick to describe her aunt, the bag, and the movements again. Then he looked at Marina. "Most likely, you'll have an inspection. They'll come based on a report. It's important not to make a scene. I'll be a witness if they ask the neighbors. You didn't open the package, and we won't. Let them find it where you hid it. You'll explain why you moved it. The child was scared and hid something that seemed dangerous. That's logical. Everything else will proceed according to protocol." Marina nodded. "I'm scared." "Don't be, and remember, the truth is on your side, and your child is the main witness." They hadn't finished their tea. A quiet knock came at the door. Alexei looked at his watch. It was 8 in the evening. 2 uniformed officers and a woman in civilian clothes with a folder stood outside. 2 witnesses, neighbors from the next building, were also present. "Good evening," the senior officer said. "A report has been filed regarding prohibited substances in your apartment. Are you prepared to be present during the inspection?" "Yes," Marina said, her face paling further. "But I want my neighbor present. He's a former officer, and my daughter will be nearby." The senior officer nodded, introduced everyone, and showed his identification and the warrant for the inspection. Everything was legal and calm. They entered. Alexei stood nearby, and Nick hugged her mother's arm and didn't let go. The inspection began in the hallway. One of the witnesses recorded the time. The woman with the folder asked, "Are there any places where you keep valuables?" "No," Marina replied. "No special hiding spots." When they approached the closet, Nick stepped forward. "Excuse me, can I say something right away? I saw Aunt Vera put a package in here. I was scared and moved it. It's under my bed in a shoebox." Everything froze for a second. It was both simple and terrifying. The senior officer asked, "Please, lead us." In the room, Nick brought out the box. Her hands trembled, but she held on. The officer carefully unwrapped the towel. The witnesses leaned in closer. The package was the same one, tightly wrapped. It wasn't opened. It was photographed, placed in another bag, sealed, and Nick's and Marina's statements were recorded. Alexei confirmed that the girl had told him everything earlier and he had advised her not to touch it. "We'll take the package for analysis," the senior officer said. "We'll invite you for explanations tomorrow. The child, to avoid further distress, can be interviewed in the presence of a teacher." "May I say something right away?" Marina intervened quietly. "My sister has a key to the apartment. She came by today, and my daughter saw her. I wasn't expecting anyone. I left for work at 9 a.m. "Is your sister Vera?" the woman with the folder asked briefly, requesting her last name and address. They left without a sound. The door closed. Marina sat down on a stool. Nick snuggled against her mother. Alexei poured water for everyone. "That's all for today," he said. "The main thing is you endured. Now it's paperwork and conversations. I'll accompany you in the morning." They slept poorly that night, but without panic. In the morning, Alexei indeed came and went with them to the department. It wasn't scary. A normal office, a desk, a pen, papers. Nick was interviewed briefly and carefully in the presence of the school psychologist. The girl recounted the events minute by minute without unnecessary details. They believed her. Her childish speech was as straight as a ruler. By lunchtime, a call came from a different office informing them that Vera had been invited to provide her statement. She arrived nervous, sweating, and trembling. Her voice hid anger and fear. At first, she tried to say she hadn't been there, didn't know, had lost her keys. Then, when shown the call logs and footage from the building's camera showing her entering Marina's apartment at 11 a.m., she began to falter. She said she was delivering a gift to her niece. They asked her to describe the gift, and she remained silent. An hour later, the conversation broke down, and she started crying. It turned out Vera had asked an acquaintance to teach her sister a lesson so Marina would understand she couldn't abandon her family. The acquaintance, who had legal troubles, offered to help. He also advised her to write a statement to speed up the process. Vera agreed, nodding without thinking about the consequences. Now she sat opposite the tabletop, afraid to look up. Other people and other charges were involved now. Marina had nothing to do with those charges. She had to live. She had to hold on for Nick. Alexei kept her away from the process as much as possible. He explained it in simple terms. "There's a false report, an attempted planting, and what the girl saw. This is serious. You do your part. Work, feed your child, rest. The paperwork will take its course." Marina returned home. Inside it was bitter, but at the same time, brighter than yesterday. Nick walked from room to room, as if checking if everything was in its place. Alexei insisted on changing the lock. It was done that same day. A week passed. The house returned to its normal routine. Marina once again woke before her alarm, brewing tea and setting out oatmeal. Nick coughed less, and her nose cleared up. The kitchen smelled of apples. Alexei stopped by for a minute every morning to say, "How was the night?" and call if anything happens. He left just as quietly. One evening, and there was a knock at the door. Vera stood on the threshold. She looked worse than usual. Her hair was like icicles, dark circles under her eyes, and in her hands a bag of pies and a crumpled bouquet of daisies. "Marina," she began from the doorway, "forgive me. I was a fool. I didn't think it would turn out this way. I got carried away. I wanted you to help, like before." Her words tangled. Marina didn't invite her in. She placed a chair at the doorway and sat on it. Alexei stood nearby in the hallway. He was invisible, but his presence kept the conversation within bounds. "Vera," Marina said quietly, "you wanted me to be arrested. You wanted my daughter to be left alone. Didn't you think about what could happen next? I don't understand how a sister could do something like that. I helped you for years. You thought I was obligated. I don't hold it against you. Anger consumes you. But we cannot live side by side anymore. Do you have the keys?" Vera took a key from her pocket and placed it on the nightstand. "I'm returning them. I'll give everything back. I've already been contacted. I understand now." Her voice trembled. "Take the pies." Marina looked at the bag, took one pie, and returned the rest. "I'll keep one. Take the rest. One is enough for us. Go, Vera. Time is yours now, and it will continue to pass. Do something right for once." Vera left without looking back. Her footsteps sounded hollow on the stairs. The days returned to normal. Morning tea, oatmeal, apple, Nick's diary on the table. During the day, work and school. In the evening, soup and homework. On Saturdays, the market. Sometimes a movie on Alexi's laptop in the living room, like old. Good neighbors. Sometimes silence, and that was enough. Nick became more attentive. She started asking the right questions. "Why do we need to change the lock if Aunt Vera still has a key?" "Because it's more peaceful." "Why can't we believe everything people say?" "Because words are unsubstantiated, but actions are proven." "Why did the police come in the evening?" "Because the statement was written in advance and that's how they work," Marina answered, simply, without evasion. The girl grew, not because of misfortune, but alongside truth. That was more important. One evening, Alexei stopped by for his usual 5 minutes and stayed for half an hour. Nick asked him to show her how to tie a proper knot in a rope. He sat at the table holding the rope, talking about the figure 8 knot, about how knots are like words. The first is tight, then smoother. Marina smiled quietly and cut apples. The house was safe. Marina thought about how easily she had given for many years and how difficult it had been to say no. She repeated to herself many times that kindness without sense is misfortune and that love should not be confused with helplessness. She didn't become harsher, just learned to stand not with a clenched fist, but with a straight back. A couple of weeks later, a letter arrived. The investigation concluded that Marina was not involved. The package had been confiscated and attached to the case. Procedural actions were underway regarding Vera and her acquaintance. Marina read it, placed it in the folder Alexei called the Shield. The folder stood on the top shelf next to family photos. That evening, Nick brought a drawing home from school. The drawing depicted their apartment door, a green mat, and beside it, 2 figures, a mother and a girl. Behind them, the neighbor with a rope and a knot in his hand, and above the door, a small key drawn in bright yellow. Nick placed the drawing on the table and said, "This is our door. It's smart now. It knows who to let in." Marina laughed. Simple words are sometimes warmer than the most eloquent phrases, and on Sunday, she and Alexei hung a small board with a hook on the wall and labeled it Keys in chalk. It was an ordinary hook, but now it signified order, their own, home, quiet. In the evening, Marina mentally returned to that day again. How the door clicked, how the child's fingers tightened, how misfortune walked with ugly steps through their hallway, and how they didn't let that misfortune pass the kitchen, not with loud shouts, fights, or tears, but with honesty, a witness, and paperwork. And because the child spoke up. That was the most important thing. She didn't know how Vera's life would unfold. She didn't expect revenge or repentance. She had simply set a boundary. Sometimes the hardest thing is to set a boundary where there was a pathway all your life. But if the boundary protects the child and the home, it is worth maintaining. Marina turned off the kitchen light, walked into the bedroom, and adjusted Nick's blanket. The girl was sleeping, her nose buried in her pillow. Her braid lay on her cheek, her breathing even. Marina sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "Thank you for not being afraid to speak." The next morning, everything began the same way again. Water, tea, 2 minutes by the window. But now, within this sameness, There was also a quiet confidence that the home knew how to protect itself, not with the door, but with the people inside, and that every act of help has a face, and every truth has its own voice. Sometimes it's the voice of a child who whispers in time, "Mom, don't be afraid. I saw everything." And the world moves on because someone found the strength not to remain silent. M.